Now note in verse 24 that God made animal skin clothing for Adam and Eve. Why animal skins for garments? They had already made clothing out of vegetation. They didn't need clothing out of vegetation for themselves. It must have done the trick, but apparently it wasn't good enough as far as God was concerned, and this is because Adam and Eve made their own covering and not God. And we learn a valuable lesson for this. Man cannot create our own covering for sin. Here we see the end results of the first blood sacrifice in the Bible. Where do you get an animal skin? From a dead animal. Was there death of anything up to now? Seems perhaps not. We don't read of any death at all, although it's difficult to imagine that insects and rodents were eternal creatures. And realize that the context of these verses is the Garden of Eden, where the only permissible foods were plants, not animals. So these animals whose skins were used to clothe Adam and Havah didn't die from old age, nor were they the product of slaughter for food. They had to be killed for the purpose of making a covering. Here we have another fundamental God principle set down for all time that we must pay attention to. The only suitable payment for sin is the shedding of innocent blood. God had to let one of his own created and innocent creatures die to pay for Adam and Eve's rebellion. Living creatures created from the same dust of the earth are humans, given animation, given life from God's own breath, just as humans. They are now having to forfeit their lives in order to atone for the rebelliousness of human beings, so that humans can have a continuing relationship with God, although not to the extent that Adam and Havah originally did. Now we hear the term covering in this vein, that it is that shed blood was a covering for man's sins. This is where the notion of blood being a covering comes from. Those animal skins covered Adam and Eve's nakedness. What is nakedness in the Bible? Sin. And the sin it covered was, in this instance, their rebellion of stealing from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now sin lived in them.